Ahoy there. We're going to be hitting the seas today when we talk about Port Canaveral and everything that's happening in that region of Central Florida. Projects, terminals, and so much more on this business backdrop. See you there. Hey there, and welcome to the Business Backdrop by Orlando Business Journal, sponsored by Edition Financial. My name is Richard Bilbao, Editor-in-Chief of the OBJ, and we have a great episode today where we talk to Port Canaveral CEO Captain John Murray about port activity and all the basic expansion that's happening at our Sea Hub. But as always, we have to make a quick stop at our top headlines for the week. Brightline considers bankruptcy amid debt load as ridership grows. The Miami-based rail operator carries a debt exceeding $5.5 billion despite revenue growth. Brightline plans to issue substantial equity and explore additional debt options. The service recently said it will, quote, pursue the planned issuance of a substantial amount of equity to repay its debts. Brightline's April ridership reached 292,626 passengers, up 20% year over year. And in case you're hungry, looking for a place for lunch, know that Whataburger is eyeing a new Osceola County location opening soon. The Texas-based Whataburger filed plans to remodel a closed Sonic location in Kissimmee at 1051 Cypress Parkway. The chain is returning to Orlando with its first location, opening late this summer or early fall. Florida is home to more than 50 Whataburger locations, so keep that in mind. And in case you're looking for a grocery store, Publix eyes a new Horizon West store less than a mile from an existing one. Lakeland-based Publix has filed permits to build a 50,239 square foot grocery store to anchor a shopping center near the Hamlin Town Center. The new store will sit less than a mile away from another existing Publix. And it also will serve the growing Horizon West population, experiencing a 315% population surge over the past decade. And those are our top headlines of the week. If you want to know more, go to orlandobusinessjournal.com. And now we'll embark on a great discussion with Port Canaveral CEO Captain John Murray right after this word from our sponsor.
When it comes to meeting your short and long-term saving goals, you need a financial partner focused on helping you, not their bottom line. At Edition Financial, we see the real you. For more than 85 years, we've helped Central Floridians get the most for their hard-earned savings. Compare our saving rates to the big banks, and we think you'll like what you see. And with convenient money management tools and personalized guidance, we make saving easy. Edition Financial, exceptional banking for everyone since 1937.
And now we're back from our break, and we're welcoming a great guest to our show here on the backdrop, Captain John Murray of Port Canaveral. John, thanks for joining us on the show.
Great to be here, Richard.
John, you and I go way back in terms of me being just a on the ground reporter and meeting you and talking about the port and the growth over time. But I wanted to ask you, it's been a while since you and I have conversed about Port Canaveral and where we're at in the state of Port Canaveral. Can you give me kind of a 30,000 foot perspective of what we're seeing happening in Port Canaveral right now?
Sure. I can't remember when you were here last, Richard, but you were one of the first people when I got here in 2016 to come out and do a full tour of the port. And I can say if you came out now, you probably wouldn't recognize a lot of what you see, just given the growth and the evolution that we've had over the last 10 years. We've got new parking garages, Cruise Terminal 3. I know you've been out here since we built that. We've got a lot of different roadway configurations, new cargo tenants, new space tenants. It's really been an exciting time to be here at Port Canaveral, and from a 50,000 foot mark now, we've got our 6 cruise berths. They're all running at very high capacity. Our cargo docks are busy. We've built 2 new cargo piers at North Cargo Berth 3 and North Cargo Berth 4. So all of our cargo docks have been rebuilt or built on the north side. So we're hitting on all cylinders right now, and it's just the challenges of keeping ahead of the business model as it continues to grow.
Speaking of keeping ahead, I was watching your State of the Port recently, and I'm going to get the timing wrong in terms of when it hit, but I believe Port Canaveral has welcomed over 100,000 passengers recently, correct? I think it was, I'm trying to remember the timing of the post of the video and how long it was, but you guys started counting in the history of the port, maybe back in the 90s, and then
we did. We
recently hit over 100,000.
Last year it was over 100 million passengers.
100 million. I'm way off.
Yeah.
Thank you. So 100 million passengers. From your perspective, just to kind of take a look back, what does that tell you as far as the growth of Port Canaveral?
It's been steady. It's been consistent. We're not out of line with the industry as a whole. The cruise industry as a whole has been growing at about 7.5 to 8% per year annually, except for the dip through the pandemic. But it came right back as if those years had had an increase incrementally as well. So the
Mhm.
industry is strong overall. I was just up in Washington last week with the Cruise Lines International Association, and we were doing our annual rounds in the halls of Congress to keep continuing to get support for our industry as a whole. And there are so many people that are dependent on the cruise industry. It's not just ships and passengers, but there's a whole lifeline of suppliers that keep these ships moving, and it means a lot of jobs in the state of Florida.
Mhm. Mhm. And you talked a little bit about the projects you guys have been working on. One of the ones that OBJ has recently written about was Cruise Terminal 10 and some of the movement on that. Can you tell us a little bit about the latest on some of these projects, where you guys are at, and what are some of the other ones that are in the works?
Sure. Our goal is to build a new cruise terminal, but the realities of getting to that new terminal is we don't have a greenfield site that we can just go in and build. So we've got to wait for certain tenant obligations to expire before we can start to turn dirt and build a new facility. So that's probably not going to happen before, say, 28, 29. So we're looking at the ships coming at us now and what can we do to improve our near term as well as long-term opportunities, because, if we can make our older terminals acceptable for larger ships, that's not a short-term issue. That's going to be for long-term as well. So we started with Cruise Terminal 5. We're in the process of modifying that terminal. It's going to go from 90,000 feet to about 170,000 square foot inside. And most of that is to handle the demands of a larger ship. The berth itself is capable of larger ships, but the terminal itself is not large enough to handle that many people. So we're going to go from like a 3,000 passenger capacity up to about 5,500. So
Oh,
we'll have a
wow.
lot more ability to put different ships at that berth. That project started about last fall in earnest. We've been working a terminal and a construction project at the same time. It's the first time we've ever tried to build a terminal that's an active terminal. So we've done that through the winter, and through the summer months, we've been able to move some of the ships that we normally call at cargo Cruise Terminal 5 over to Cruise Terminal 6. And that's given our contractors more straight time because they have to mobilize and demobilize every time they're using the ship for passenger operations. So by moving the cargo ship, the cruise ships over to the other terminal, it gives us a longer spread between mobs and demobs for the contractor, which means we're actually going to get that job finished by probably October of this year. So
Oh,
we're really
wow.
excited to have that. So this winter season, we'll have Cruise Terminal 5 for all practical purposes up and running as a larger facility. The big areas there was the passenger waiting area up top, the passenger lay down area for baggage and everything at the bottom, and to also have a larger screening area and a larger area for Customs and Border Protection to do their jobs. So those are the big areas or big elements that we're focused on there. The other thing you mentioned, Cruise Terminal 10. Likewise, we have some ships coming to Cruise Terminal 10 that are larger than the current operation the terminal can hold. So as you know, we've got the MSC World and World Atlantic coming next year, and the World Atlantic's going to need a larger facility than what we have today. So we're also working with a different designer and team to expand that terminal, and we've got a pretty good plan to do that and make both Cruise Terminals 5 and Cruise Terminal 10s much more capable of handling the larger vessels, which in the long run has been a good thing for us. Instead of just jumping into a new terminal and keeping the two older, smaller terminals, we're now going to have two mid and large size terminals that will enable us to handle all sorts of different traffic.
John, you mentioned, let me actually, and to catch up on it, how long you been with Port Canaveral?
10 years in February.
So, just kind of pick your brain, going back 10 years when you first saw the infrastructure at Port Canaveral to today, what's been the thing that kind of stands out to you most as far as like looking back at a decade of growth and work there?
I think a lot of what we've done in the last 10 years is we've gotten smarter about what we're doing, getting,
Mm,
in the old days, I hate to say it, but it was like we need a parking garage to go with the terminal. There was no data or analysis to determine how big a parking garage we should build.
mm,
And one of the things that we started, 10 years ago is to really start getting to a data focused environment and say, okay, if we're building a garage for, ships that are 6,000 passengers and they're here 5 days a week, we have enough information now I can tell you pretty close as to what the maximum car capacity is required to handle those
mm,
ships. And that's just the sort of data. So that's helped us build smarter around the port. For example, at the north side at Cruise Terminal 6, which is right adjacent to Cruise Terminal 5, we had an 825 car garage. And we're realizing that that's not big enough for the needs going forward. And one of the challenges we have on the north side is no more dirt to create a new parking garage, to add to it, create more space without also creating new conflicting traffic patterns that aren't going to help us. So we ended up making the tough decision of tearing down a garage that was 800 passengers, 825 cars rather, and we're building a 2,700 car garage on that same spot. So, normally you try to build something else elsewhere, but in this particular instance, we have to do it. But we have the science to know that 2,700 is the number of spaces we're going to need for the foreseeable future with those two terminals. And it gets to a point where you do max out, because with X number of ships at two terminals, and you know what the max capacities are and what the rotations might be, you're not going to exceed those capacities if you build them according to your metrics that you have.
Mhm. So you talked a little bit about some of the large ships that are coming, the MSC, World Atlantic, and some of the other ones that we're going to see in the future. How are we seeing this continued growth of bigger, more? These ships are the destinations themselves. It's not where they're going to. How are we seeing that growth in the industry dictate a little bit of your guys' direct investment? You've talked a little bit about it already in terms of parking and things like that, where you have ships of 6,000 passengers and more. But how have you guys been closely watching that growth, as well as how you guys start to kind of game plan those years to come, so that way you're ready for them? And as they continue to keep investing, you continue to stay ahead of the game.
Well, one of the things, Richard, that's very important to us is understanding your geography. And our geography is, we're in a lucky place. And, as the cruise lines have evolved into the short sailings, private islands, that sort of thing, Bahamas being a primary destination, there's really only three ports: Port Canaveral, Port Everglades, and Miami, that can
Mhm.
make those 3-day rotations, which is a sweet spot for both the cruise lines and the cruise ports, where you can turn a full ship twice a week. And that is, has been one of our advantages. We're geographically advantaged, which is a positive thing. So, we've looked to the future and we know what ships can come here. The other thing with the big ships is they all have very, very high air drafts, how high they are out of the water. And most ports have bridges or power lines or something that make it unacceptable for the cruise ships because they can't get under them. So we have no obstructions here, Everglades or Miami. So we're all the three ports that are really in the mix for the new cruise models, cruise business models. And, we try to focus on that aspect, knowing what their demands are and what their requirements are. Now, one thing you asked, what's Port Canaveral doing to build for that future? Well, we have 6 cruise terminals today. We've got room for a seventh, maybe an eighth sometime in the future. We'll come back to that later.
Mhm.
But building the cruise terminals now, and two of our existing terminals are, I call them non-denominational terminals. We're not building them for a specific cruise line.
Mhm.
So, it's for a cruise line, but who goes there is Port Canaveral's idea, not the cruise line's idea. So, it's a little bit different relationship than we've had in the past, but I can then put multiple cruise lines at one terminal where we couldn't do that in the past. In the past, it'd be a Carnival terminal or a Royal Caribbean terminal, and it'd be exclusive to them. And if somebody else wanted to go there, it was only if the berth is available. But if we have the
Mhm.
terminals that are all neutral, it allows us to work with each line and each deployment to maximize the footprint that we have at Port Canaveral, which is how we get very high utilization of our berths as a result. So, for example, we have one berth that we've got Harmony of Seas coming in this summer. This berth at Cruise Terminal 1 will be used 5 or 6 days a week, every week. So that's how we get what we get in our numbers is the high utilization. And we know that even if we build 2 more cruise terminals, there's a finite point that we can sustain, not just at Port Canaveral, but on the infrastructure getting in and out of Port Canaveral. And that's one of my biggest challenges today and going into the future is how do we get State Road 528 and 401 Bridge to a
Mhm.
point where the port can accept the traffic coming in without,
Mhm.
if you have one small accident on 528, you create gridlock for, tens of thousands of people trying to get to Port Canaveral and vice versa, and everybody that lives in the area. So it's managing the congestion that's a challenge. We can manage it once you get on port, but getting in and out of the port is something we really need some support, and we're looking to the state and the Department of Transportation and our cruise partners and any partners, cargo partners, on what we can
Mhm.
all collectively do to get this road widened.
Speaking of the road, before you get there, am I correct that your guys' projections for this year is about 9 million passengers?
Yes.
So, to your point about the roadways, and you kind of touch base on trying to get the partners involved. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've seen that congestion or those challenges, those pain points, which are typically not on you guys, it's the infrastructure around it, how that's been kind of building up as these ships get bigger, as these weekends get shorter, with travel cycles, and what kind of impact that has on you guys from a business standpoint?
It has a lot of impact on us, and our operating expenses go up, and we do everything we can here at the port. For example, we'll hire off-duty sheriff's department deputies to manage traffic, and at certain points we just bypass the street lights and put the deputies out to keep the traffic flowing. So we do everything we can to keep it moving, but once it leaves port property, then it's on a different cycle. And
Mm.
my concern is not creating such a gridlock here at Port Canaveral that we're affecting our communities, our port community, our external partner communities like City of Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, City of Cocoa, any of that with congestion that could easily be managed with the proper road accesses in and out. So there's a point where we'll just say, yes, we could build two more terminals or one more terminal, but we're not going to because we can't handle that additional infrastructure challenges with more traffic
Oh,
coming in
wow.
and out. So at some point, it will adversely impact our business. And keep in mind, we're a cargo port as well. So when we have all the passengers coming and going on Mondays, Fridays, Wednesdays, Tuesdays, whatever day of the week, all of our cargo customers are also trying to move trucks out with aggregates, lumber, all sort of products that come into the state. We have our space partners who are trying to move rocket boosters and spare parts around the port. And between, up on 401, we've got both Blue Origin and SpaceX have operations on the port, so they're trying to get material. So once the roads get clogged up, everybody pays a price. It's impactful to everyone. So we don't want to get to a point where we become a place no one wants to go because it's too hard to get there.
You mentioned a little bit about space business and how that's been changing for you guys, and looking back on the early days of space and how there were drone ships coming into Port Canaveral. It became like a spectacle. You would have folks at Jetty Park kind of watching those come in. How have you seen that grow, and where do you see the future opportunities for you guys as we see, for example, SpaceX go public and Blue Origin making investments in the region? I got to assume that you guys see a bigger piece of the pie for you guys.
Yes and no. We've got new operators coming, both Relativity Space and Stoke Space are coming in by the end of the year. They're both contemplating waterside operations and recovery of boosters offshore, but they don't have any immediate plans to do that. Blue Origin, of course, has their barge, the Jacqueline here, who has recovered three boosters from offshore. SpaceX is in a transitionary state now. And there's no secrets here. It's they're evolving where Starship is going to be their primary vehicle, and as they evolve to Starship here at the Cape, they have less and less dependency on the Falcon 9, which is their offshore recovery vehicle. And most of the flights that are recovered offshore are for commercial satellites or the Starlink launches. And when Starlink moves to Starship, the expected use of the Falcon 9 will go down here at the Cape. And you can see that the primary uses then will be for certain national security missions, the space station, astronauts to space, that sort of thing. But even today, those Falcon 9 launchers return to land. They don't land on the barge offshore. So the requirements for the barge will diminish once Starship starts flying on a regular basis.
Mm.
Blue's in a different operation. They're still landing offshore, and they've done three recoveries so far. I anticipate theirs probably getting more robust and picking up the pace over the coming months and years. They finally gotten into a point where they're getting a little bit of a routine going, which means their equipment hopefully will get to, like, SpaceX rarely has equipment in port now. It's always out at sea catching a Dragon or a Falcon 9, and they're bringing it back to the port, and they'll take it off the ship in anywhere from 3.5 hours to less than a day. So they're right back out getting another one. So their model is a little bit different. It's a little more mature, but they're also, as I say, converting where they'll be bringing more boosters back to land and fewer back from the water.
That's, it's really interesting to see that and how you guys continue to kind of capitalize that or where that industry goes. Last topic I want to talk with you is a lot of people obviously talk about space or cruises from Port Canaveral. You touched base a little bit on cargo, but so much of the economy does run through the cargo that comes through Port Canaveral. You and I have talked about gasoline and fuel that comes through there that I believe I forgot the number, but a lot of it goes to MCO here at Orlando International.
A lot of the jet fuel goes to Orlando, yes. For the international flights, they take advantage of our foreign trade zone where the fuel comes in from an international location, then it gets re-exported, for lack of a better description, on an international aircraft at Orlando. So there are no duties paid on those types of movements. So yeah, and the fuel component to Orlando International is very important for the airport from Port Canaveral. We do gasoline, diesel, we do ship bunker fuels. So a lot of different commodities come into our Seaport Canaveral facility on the north side of the port, and south side we have Transmontane as a fuel facility here as well. So we're very important to Central Florida in terms of fuel distribution on the East Coast in particular. And that continues. We've got a slag operation with Heidelberg Materials. That slag is a material that's mixed with concrete, and it creates a different. It gets mixed with cement to create a concrete that's part slag and part cement. But slag has different features that makes the concrete product much more resilient to cracking, to water intrusion. It makes it a much more durable product going forward. It makes it a lot more expensive, but more and more construction is going to having a slag component in there because of the unique properties of slag. So we have a significant facility here that does imports and then redistributes throughout the state. We've also got lumber. We're the largest lumber port in the United States for imported lumber from Europe. We also have a tremendous amount of aggregates, granite, lime rock, the things used in road construction. And, the Department of Transportation is one of the biggest recipients of the product coming through the port.
Captain Murray, I want to thank you for your time. One last question for you. As you look into the rest of 2026, what is it that you, as the head of one of our state's ports, what are you closely watching from maybe a larger scale?
Larger scale, just continuing to watch the evolving space industry. It's very important to us. This port started at the same time as the space industry, and over the last 70 years, we've been very, very much tied with one type of launch vehicle versus another, and even bringing pieces back that come through the port. And over the years, there's been a very, very close relationship, and we foster that relationship in a very strong way. And we always want to do what we can. I think what we're excited to see now is the evolution as you start migrating to the next gen rockets from Falcon 9 to Starship, and Blue has got a new design that they're coming out with on the new Glenn, which is a bigger, larger rocket. And it's just exciting to be here and see all these evolutions happening before our very eyes.
Well, sounds good. And it's really exciting. John, thank you again for taking the time for joining us on The Backdrop.
It's great, Richard. Appreciate it.
When it comes to meeting your short and long-term saving goals, you need a financial partner focused on helping you, not their bottom line. At Addition Financial, we see the real you. For more than 85 years, we've helped Central Floridians get the most for their hard-earned savings. Compare our saving rates to the big banks, and we think you'll like what you see. And with convenient money management tools and personalized guidance, we make saving easy. Addition Financial, exceptional banking for everyone since 1937.
So thank you to Captain Murray and Port Canaveral for joining the show and sharing some insight of the activity at Port Canaveral. And that's going to wrap up our latest episode of the Business Backdrop. Thank you to our sponsor, Addition Financial, and thank you to you for coming back and joining us on another show. So please like, subscribe, rate our show, and tell your friends about the Business Backdrop. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. And as always, I'll see you next time.